Hi, everyone. Welcome to our CMX Masterclass. Quickly, we're going to run through the agenda. So we're going to start with the welcome, then which is happening now. Then Darcy's going to hop on, and she's going to facilitate the masterclass. We will have live Q&A for about 25 minutes, so lots to get through. If you have any questions, please put those in the Q&A tab, and then the event will wrap up at 1 p.m. PT. Some housekeeping slides before we get started. Please use the sessions chat tab for general chat. Ask questions using the Q&A tab, which I just mentioned. Please upvote the questions that you want asked. I will be pulling questions that have the most votes. Close any distracting applications except for the Mentimeter. Look at me, already just contradicting myself here. This event will be recorded and posted in our YouTube channel. I will be putting the link in after this. And a pro tip, Bevy Virtual works best with the most updated version of Google Chrome. So our new CMX Community Values, these are made for and reviewed by the CMX community. We value our community's input and couldn't be happier with our new values. The first one is be generous. The second, be groundbreaking. And the third, be actively inclusive. We are very excited to bring you another masterclass, the second for the year. If you're new to our masterclasses, this series is going to be a deep dive of community-related subjects where you will have an expert come and deliver a masterclass. Hey, Darcy, that's you. Actionable tips that really solve community professional pain points. And it provides you all with the help and tools you need to succeed. If you have any ideas of subjects or topics that you want to review, please reach out to me. My email's right at the bottom. I want to know what you want to learn so I can help you grow. The goal of CMX is for each attendee to walk away with 1, meeting a new community professional, add each other on LinkedIn, getting 1 actionable thing you can implement today, and 3, advocating and growing for the community industry. CMX events are powered by Bevy, a software company made by community managers for community managers. Everything you've seen so far for this event, from the RSVP page, the page we're on now, to the post-event survey, is all done through Bevy. If you want to learn more about Bevy and how you can help that to grow and build your community, please visit bevy.com for a demo. All right. The moment you have all been waiting for and the reason why you are here. Today we have Darcy Luoma teaching a CMX Masterclass about building your core confidence, and I cannot wait for this workout. Darcy Luoma is an author, master certified coach, and business owner who has more degrees and certifications than shoes. I mean, yes. Her passion is to coach others to reach peak performance. As a lifelong triathlete and Ironman, her training, grit, and determination to get physically fit served as the inspiration to create her model to get thoughtfully fit. As CEO of a coaching and consulting firm and one of America's most highly sought after coaches, she and her team have worked with more than 500 organizations in 48 industries, impacting tens of thousands of leaders and teams. But her most important and most challenging role is being a mom to 2 spunky teenage daughters, a teenage cat, and get this, 8 foster dogs. 8. Darcy's here to help you get thoughtfully fit. Please welcome your coach for today, Darcy Luoma. Everyone drop an emoji in the chat right now. Let's hear it for her. Woo!
Thank you. I love it. Okay, so I want to just get real right off the bat and ask, who here wanted to like clock someone in the last year? I mean, it's been a really challenging year. Oh, thank you. Thanks for.
We're all ready. All right, Darcy, I'm going to hop on off and you take it away, okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Anne-Marie. It has been a challenging year with pandemic. I mean, who thought that in January of 2020, 2 years later, we would still be at the place that we are at with the challenges of masks and vaccinations and social distancing and a global pandemic. And so I want to invite you to go to the Mentimeter link. It's at the very top of the chat, and just answer this question of what's been challenging for you over the past year. And reflect on your relationships, your work, maybe your work-life balance. I know the clients that my team and I work with have found that the problems, the people problems and the challenges that they have normally, in many cases, were exponential. So let's just see what's coming in here on Menti. Not seeing my friends as often, social anxiety after being isolated, staying connected to people while living far away, balancing safety concerns with my need to interact with those I love. Absolutely. Especially those of you who are extroverts. The isolation for many has been really challenging. Oh my gosh, having cancer and trying to keep it all together. My heart goes out to you, whoever wrote that. Work-life balance. Putting myself first. Being so far away from my family. Becoming a mom for the first time in a pandemic and switching careers. Holy cow, that's like a triple. Just reading through these demonstrates how challenging things have been. And life throws us curveballs and obstacles and adversity. And the only thing that is certain is that there will be more uncertainty and more challenges. And that's what we're going to explore today. We're going to look at the 6 top hurdles that get in the way of being high performing based on thousands and thousands of hours of coaching clients over the last 15 years. And I'm going to share with you a core workout and a strategy with 3 simple steps that will help you to navigate those challenges, to build your core confidence so that you can handle any curveball thoughtfully and then get back to doing what you do best. And the challenges that you are highlighting here in the Menti are similar to the challenges that my team and I notice with our clients. And while the pandemic has escalated and made a lot of those people problems feel even harder, the reality is people are annoying and life is hard. I think all the way back to 2001, when I was first hired to run a U.S. Senate office. So Megan and Madison, maybe others of you are from Wisconsin. Feel free to type in the chat where you're from as we're going through. I'd love hearing and seeing where everybody is located. I worked for one of our U.S. senators, for Herb Cole. And I was hired at age 29 with no experience in the Senate, no experience in the federal government. I had never managed a team before. On top of it, it came down to 2 candidates, and I was hired and selected over the other candidate who was in his late 50s, had been working for the senator for almost 2 decades, and now he reported to me. To say I was in over my head is an understatement. I had more challenges and obstacles in that role. I regularly felt blindsided and out of control. I would have constituents who would call and be angry. Where's my veterans check? Where's my Social Security? My taxes pay your salary. You need to figure this out. I had lobbyists that would come in wanting the senator to change his vote. When the Iraq War started, we had protesters come to our office, hundreds of them, in an office that was like designed for about 8 people. It was my own personal January 6th. And I was regularly on autopilot, reacting in the moment and not handling myself thoughtfully. And the challenges and the people problems that I experienced in that role are the same challenges and hurdles that we notice our clients have that get in the way of being high performing. Now, of course, the people and the players are different. The details, the specifics, the flavors are different. But at the end of the day, we all experience similar hurdles that get in the way of being successful personally and professionally. And those hurdles and challenges that I experienced and that my clients experienced are probably similar hurdles to those that you experience. And that's what I want to share with you right now is the top 6 hurdles. So I spent 5 years researching when I started to notice, like, gosh, every client that's coming in, whether it was executive coaching or leadership coaching or team coaching, they're all struggling with similar problems. So I spent 5 years categorizing and researching what the problems were. And we had all these flip charts and Post-its all over. And what we found are 6 main hurdles. And as I share these hurdles, I invite you to reflect on which of them do you struggle with? So the first hurdle, clients come in saying, oh my God, Darcy, there is so much to do. I can't even think. Sue came to one of our coaching sessions recently and she said, Darcy, it's overwhelming. I have nonstop emails. And when I find my emails and I go to a meeting, I come back and my screen is full again. And my meetings are back to back to back. And that's on top of then the colleagues and clients who are coming in. Hey, do you got a minute? And they want me to deal with the crisis of the moment. We get overwhelmed. And that in that overwhelm, we're not able to be strategic and innovative and proactive. Can you relate? Just like if you want to be physically fit, you have to take rest days. As a matter of fact, any athlete knows that your muscles rebuild stronger on the days that you are taking off. As a matter of fact, if you don't take rest days, you'll get injured and your performance will go down. It's counterintuitive. Second hurdle. I don't always handle myself the way I'd like. So I had a executive in one of my team retreats, and he came to me at the break and he said, "Darcy, I have got to figure this out. Last night, I left the office late. I had to get home to make dinner and quickly turn around in order to get my board meeting on time. And I had to drop the kids off at soccer practice before going to my meeting. But I took one last call before leaving the office, which I shouldn't have done. And that meant I was now in the middle of rush hour traffic. And I pull in the garage. Now I'm late, even more late, and open the door. And I stumble on all of the shoes and the backpacks. I look in the kitchen. Nobody has started dinner. And I look over in the living room, and there I see my spouse and kids on their phones. And he said, I could just feel myself getting hot and getting frustrated. And I knew I wasn't going to handle myself the way I wanted, and I couldn't stop it. Can you relate? That's a hurdle that my clients experience. Hurdle number 3. I feel stuck. Stuck in a job that no longer feels fulfilling. Stuck in a project that you don't know how to move forward. Stuck in a relationship. We get stuck. And if you can relate to feeling stuck, chances are it's probably because you're doing really big, hard, important things. Imagine what it would be like if you never got stuck. You'd probably be bored. And so that's normal. And yet, when we're stuck, we often get paralyzed and can't move forward. Hurdle number 4. I'd be fine if only you were different. If only my boss would smile when I walk in the office, then I could just be more relaxed and be more efficient in my job. But I just always feel on edge because he never smiles. If only my neighbor would stop mowing the grass at 7 a.m. on the weekend when I want to sleep in. If somebody else would change, you could be happy. And of course, I don't disagree. And yet, anytime somebody comes into a coaching conversation saying, okay, here's what I want to focus on today, Darcy. How can I get my colleague to ... Doesn't matter what's coming next. We can't get somebody else to be different. And a lot of people spend a tremendous amount of energy being frustrated that somebody isn't the way they think they should be, and trying to figure out how to change them. Can you relate? Is there somebody that just bugs you? I'm sorry for putting them in your mind right now. Hurdle number 5. I have relationships that don't work. Maybe you're overfunctioning. Maybe you're in a relationship where you are doing all of the work and you're starting to feel exhausted. And maybe in the short term, you say, it's okay, I'll do it. It's not a big deal. But in the long term, it's not sustainable because you're getting resentful and frustrated. Having relationships that are out of balance is a core hurdle that people bring into coaching conversations. And the last hurdle, I react poorly when blindsided. I had a gentleman who told me a story. He said, Darcy, I don't want to react poorly. I don't want to get defensive, but just last week, I was in a team meeting and somebody criticized a decision that I made. And instead of pausing to get curious and ask some questions, I could feel myself immediately getting hot and getting frustrated. Can you relate? That when you are caught off guard, when you're blindsided, you get your default comes out. You're on autopilot. I like to think of it like dodgeball. Has anybody here ever played dodgeball? Put in the chat if you are old enough. I don't even know if I say old enough because maybe they still play dodgeball. But I know when I was in elementary school, we played dodgeball. And the balls would be coming at you at a pace and an intensity and from different directions where you didn't know where they were coming from. I hated it just watching as people are. I do not play dodgeball. I would get hurt. That's right, Anne-Marie. I agree. I still regularly play it. Wait, Venya, you still play it? That's amazing. There are adult dodgeball teams still? Okay, Jessica, that is not something that I would want. Who here loves dodgeball? Anybody? Elizabeth, I agree. So much anxiety. Slaughter ball, Dave. I love it. You can dodge a wrench if you can dodge a ball. I'm from the UK. It's not a thing here. Carmen, you are not missing out. It's horrendous. That's what it feels like when you are dodging these balls and you don't know where they're coming from. And I was just wanting to be like, let's just call a timeout. So these are the top hurdles. And what I'd like to have you do now is if you go back to the Menti, and that for those of you who may have joined late, you can see at the very top of the chat is the hot link. You can click on that link and just vote on which of these hurdles do you experience. Okay, I see our vote. Share my screen here. We can start to see the totals that are coming in. Okay, I feel stuck is taking a lead right now. Second right now, there's so much to do, I can't think. Okay, now we've got a tie with I don't always handle myself the way I'd like. And a strong fourth, I react poorly when blindsided. I feel stuck is the top one. So fascinating. So the reality is there are going to be hurdles. There are going to be challenges. So if you experience these hurdles, you're normal. But how you handle them is what determines whether you falter or flourish. Because we don't control a global pandemic. We don't control that frustrating, annoying neighbor. We don't control how our boss chooses to show up when they walk in the room. But we do control what happens next, how we respond. And in the conversations that I had with Anne-Marie beforehand, I heard some of the challenges and specific hurdles that you experience in this industry, building communities, getting executive buy-in. Big challenge. Being taken seriously in the business world. You're pretty cutting edge building communities. Another challenge, maybe being the only person that's running a community and possibly of hundreds or thousands. And maybe not a lot of internal support, or maybe you're overlooked because others don't really understand what you're doing. Or another challenge, trying to prove the value of what you do when it's really hard to have the metrics to show that the community you're building is resulting in more customers, more sales. Those are big challenges that can create people problems. And what the research shows is that the highest performing people and leaders all have one thing in common: self-awareness. It's not that they don't have hurdles and challenges. It's that they're aware of what those hurdles and challenges are and what their blind spots are. And so I want to invite you, if you're curious to know what's your biggest hurdle, you can jot this down. You can bring it up on a tab right now, or you can jot it down and do it when the masterclass is over. If you go to thoughtfullyfit.com, there's a free quiz there. It'll take 2 or 3 minutes to complete, and it'll tell you what is your biggest hurdle. And then some strategies that you can use to start overcoming that hurdle right now. They're the same strategies that I use in my life. They're the same strategies that my team and I use with our clients. They're the same strategies that are outlined in the Thoughtfully Fit book. And if you sign up for and take the quiz, you will get put on our email list to get Thoughtfully Fit tips that come out twice a month. And those tips are designed to give you just a dose of inspiration and strategy on how to overcome the challenges. They're stories and case studies from the organizations and teams and individuals that we work with to help you overcome and clear those hurdles. And so the aha that sparked the whole Thoughtfully Fit model, which is, when you're thoughtfully fit, you handle yourself thoughtfully in every situation. I got a phone call from my best friend. It was 1998. I was 27 years old. And my friend Nancy called me. And she said, "Darcy, I think we should do a triathlon on Sunday." What? This Sunday? Are you crazy? No. I think we should do it. I'm like, I can't do I've never done a triathlon. Are you kidding me? Okay, Darcy, you love running. You've done marathons. You own a bike. You know how to swim. I mean, how hard can it be? The first red flag should have been the name of the triathlon, which she didn't tell me until later. The Devil's Challenge. I'm not even kidding. So she convinced me to sign up for this triathlon. And we arrived at 5:30 in the morning that Sunday. And I started to look around in the fields and was like, wait a minute, where, after we get out of the lake for the swim, like, where do you change out of your swimsuit? And come to find out, you don't. How many of you have done a triathlon? I'd love, type in the chat if you've either done a triathlon or if you have gone and cheered for one. So I can hear who knows what I'm talking about. Turns out you actually wear the same thing for the whole race, like your wet swimsuit. Ooh. Let's see. We've got, hard pass. It's on my list. Awesome, Kara. Triathlon is my jam. Yes, Andrea, come to Wisconsin. We have a lot of them here. Anne-Marie, not me, but I want to be a swimmer. I've watched one. Great, Alexandra. Well, I, being at my first one, didn't realize you wear the same thing. So I start walking down to the lake for the start of my wave. There's, like hundreds of people on the beach. And I look around and I'm like, wait a minute, am I supposed to have a wetsuit? I had no idea. And I'm like, wait, how do you bike in a wetsuit? And so I get to the wave that whatever it was, 25 to 29-year-olds. And there's about 70 women in my wave, and the gun goes off and we all go running into the lake. And I am immediately getting swum over and kicked and hit in the head. I could not figure out, like, how do I know where to go? I mean, I'm in the pool. I have the blue line underneath me to go straight. Here in the lake, well, I can't see anything because the water is churning and there's so many people. And, there's these buoys and I can't figure out, like, how in the world. I mean, it was hard. It was really hard. I started hyperventilating. I had to go on my back and do the backstroke for a while. I get out of the lake and get on my bike. It was a mountain bike, super hilly in the Devil's Lake area. And I had to get off and walk up every hill. The only reason I didn't take the SAG vehicle back to the start and quit the race is because there were like tons of people out cheering and I was just too embarrassed. My ego was too big and I didn't want to have the drive of shame back to the starting line. So I made it to the run. It was hard. I had to walk a lot of it and I somehow finished that race. I was miserable. I don't know what place I came in, but if I wasn't last, I was definitely in the bottom 10%. And I afterwards reflected on the experience. And while I was, terribly embarrassed at my performance, I was like, that energy was awesome. There was something I loved about the crowds and the people. And I was like, I got to redeem myself. I want to do this again. So I made some choices. And I hired a triathlon coach. I joined a triathlon team. I signed up for an open water swim class where we practiced how to sight and how you look at the trees and the line of sight and the beach on the other side of the lake to be able to sight when you can't see the buoys. And I bought a road bike and I started to train and to practice. This last fall, 23 years later, I did that same devil's challenge. I've done it many, 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 many times. I'm getting warm as I'm talking about this story. So I did that same devil's challenge race this past September. And you know what? It was fun. And it was easy. Okay, I'm kidding. It wasn't easy, but it was a lot easier than that first year that I did it. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think it was easier because they changed the course? Do you think it was easier because there were less hills? Because it was shorter? No, it was the same race. It was easier because I had trained and practiced. And that's where I had this aha that if I could train and practice to be physically fit, why couldn't I train and practice to be mentally fit? If I'm noticing all of the problems that my clients are bringing in are similar, how can we create a model that will help people to train and practice for those people problems? To train and practice to be able to set a boundary and say no so that they aren't overwhelmed and have time to be strategic and innovative and think. To be able to react thoughtfully instead of reacting on autopilot and having a knee-jerk reaction when blindsided. To be able to handle yourself the way you'd like, even when you're stressed or frustrated. And that's what I realized is that we could train and practice to be thoughtfully fit, to handle these hurdles thoughtfully so that you can get back to doing what you do best. Because the reality is, when we don't handle ourselves thoughtfully, the problems get worse. When I was in Senator Cole's office and I was getting yelled at, when I was on autopilot and, we'd yell back or shut down, it just made the problem worse. Now, not only do you have the initial problem that you're struggling with, you have the aftermath of adding fuel to the fire. And that's what we're going to explore right now, is how can you develop your mental muscle to handle any people problem thoughtfully? And how can you build your core confidence? Because when we look at the thoughtfully fit model, there are 6 practices that align with those 6 hurdles. And there is a core. And what I want to share with you is the core of the model that will help you to be able to handle yourself thoughtfully with confidence, regardless of whether the challenges are small or big. You get an email from somebody that sort of gets under your skin, and instead of pounding out a reply and hitting send, or worse, reply all, you take a moment. Because when you have a strong core, you can handle those challenges more thoughtfully. Just like if you physically have a strong core, every movement's easier, right? Whether you want to play basketball or cross-country ski, or just be able to put your own suitcase up in the overhead bin. Having a strong core makes all of those activities easier, and you're less likely to get injured. So thoughtfully fit has a core, and it's 3 simple steps. Step 1 is to pause. Step 2 is to think. And step 3 is to act. And this is the most important strategy that you can use no matter which of those 6 obstacles is your biggest. And so what I want to do for the remainder of our time together today is just take a look at each of those 3 steps. And I want you to be thinking about which one do you do best? Because all of us have a default. And so I'm going to describe the 3. And as I do, I want you to reflect on which one is strongest for you, and you can vote in the Mentimeter. And so if you have that tab open, you can vote on which one of these do you do the best. So the first is the pause. Now, some of you are probably really good at the pause. And yet, our strength taken to the extreme becomes a weakness. So maybe that pause turns into a 5-hour Netflix binge. Some of you are really good at thinking, and you can have a critical analysis of a problem and explore the different options. But that strength of being able to think can turn into overthinking and can then turn into analysis paralysis. You come up with option A and B, but then also option C, D, E, and F, and you never quite pull the trigger to act. And who here is really good at acting? Like, you get stuff done. As a matter of fact, you're so good that people probably give you more stuff because they know you're going to get it done. And yet that strength, which is really great, you get stuff done, taken to the extreme, you might be impulsive. You might act too quickly and then have to go back and clean up the mess. Let's just take a quick look. It looks like here, okay, the biggest is the actors here in this group. And with a close second, think. And third, only a couple of people are strong at the pause. So let's take a look at each of those 3 and how you can build your core confidence. And so you can engage your core to be able to handle those obstacles. So the first step is to pause. And I want you to think about the pause like a stop sign. When you are driving along and you get to a stop sign, you don't stop and take out your lunch and open your laptop, start replying to emails. You just stop long enough to raise your awareness so that you can proceed when it feels safe. The pause is the essential first step. And you think about it. Anytime you learn a new sport, the first thing you learn is how to stop. You're going to go downhill skiing, ice skating, rollerblading, biking. You need to first learn how to hit the pause button. So, don't know. I'd love to hear if any of you have ever gone to use a pitching machine. If you've maybe played baseball or softball, go ahead and feel free to type that in the chat if you've used a pitching machine. My daughter, when she was 8 years old, was in softball and she wanted to go and practice her batting. And so she asked me to take her early. And we got there, and she, I set up my lawn chair and took my book and started to read. And I look up, my daughter started the pitching machine, and all of a sudden I'm noticing her, like the balls are coming fast and furious, and she's getting hit, she's yelling and she's screaming. And I'm like, what's going on? And she ran up and hit the pause button. What she didn't know was that the pitching machine was set to the high school varsity girls level. Where in your life do you need to hit the pause button? Where you're maybe on the treadmill and you're going so fast and you've got emails coming in and you're trying to build your community, and then you're trying to figure out how to create the metrics, and then you're taking meetings and you're just going so fast that you're on autopilot. And I see your question, Jessica, is pause a period of reflection? Yeah. The pause could be a breath. It could be counting to 3. It could be longer. If you notice that you're really worked up and you're feeling frustrated or angry, you might take a longer pause. It's a chance for you to put a little bit of space between whatever is happening and your reaction. And I want you to think about when you go on autopilot and how you can create a pause. And one of the things that I like to do, if you put your hand out like this, and like an L, like my daughters will do loser, and then your other thumb and forefinger, and you pinch right here. I call this the pause pinch. This can be a reminder in the moment when you need to pause. The benefit is it's also a reflexology point. And so it'll calm you down. And you can do it on your lap. You can do it behind your back. You can do it where people don't have to notice that you are doing that pause pinch. And the more you need to pause, the tighter you can squeeze. So you can take a breath. And that pause sets you up for step 2, which is to think. I love this, Joe. Pausing in my workday to listen to this session is very nice. Thank you. You all are taking a pause right now to think. Lori, the pause pinch. Wow, I love it. Yes. Step 2 now is where you create some new awareness. And the think is where you ask yourself some thoughtful questions. What my goal was in developing the Thoughtfully Fit model and in writing this book was to be able to give you access to the same tools that I use and that my coaching team uses with our clients. And one of the most powerful things that we do is ask questions to get our clients to think and to try on different perspectives and to increase their awareness. And so the think is where you are asking some thoughtful questions. How do I want to show up right now? What's triggering me? Do I really want to say yes to this request? Or do I want to honor work-life balance and say no? When you think about step 2, the think, I'll share a quick story. My other daughter, Josie, was doing a league called Kids Best Basketball. And it was her first season. She was 9 years old. It was her only season. She did not like it. And so she would, be out on the basketball court and somebody would throw her the ball and she would get the ball and she'd be dribbling, sometimes double dribbling, and she'd pivot and then she'd pivot and she'd be pivoting. And the other kids would be saying, come on, throw the ball, shoot the ball. You have to be able to think to set you up for step 3, which is to act. So you can't get paralyzed in the think. And she would get paralyzed and wouldn't be able to throw that ball. So in the think, you're creating new awareness so that you can then act thoughtfully. And you have to act. Maybe in that relationship that feels out of balance, you, instead of overreacting in the moment and getting mad, you take the time to pause and think, okay, what do I want to say? How do I want to have this tough conversation? What feedback do I want to give? But you cycle in the think. And you never quite get to having the conversation. At some point, you have to take the shot. You have to pass the ball. You have to execute. And when you do all 3 in order, pause, think, act, you set yourself up for success. And it's very simple, but it's not always easy. But I want to tell you, so for those of you who are sitting there thinking, okay, Darcy, this is great. It might work for your clients, but you don't know my challenging colleagues. You don't know my mother-in-law. You don't know. And you're right. I don't. And I would bet that if we had a conversation, you could share with me some big challenges and people problems that you are experiencing. I have no doubt. And yet, I will tell you that I am no stranger to challenges. In 2016, it was March 17th, 2016. My life blew up in the most extreme way. And the biggest nightmare, it wasn't even a nightmare because never in my life would I have ever predicted that something like this would happen to me. I'm going to share with you just read a short section from the Thoughtfully Fit book to set the stage for this. It's Thursday afternoon, a hotel conference room. I filled my mug with fresh coffee in the back of the room and settled in while I waited for the training I was attending to start. That's when I felt my phone vibrate. It was my neighbor calling. Normally I wouldn't respond, but my spidey sense told me to answer the phone and step out of the room. Darcy, what's going on at your house? There are 40 to 50 police cars, a SWAT team, and officers with guns surrounding your house. They just took John out barefoot in handcuffs. He wouldn't look at us as they escorted him to the police car and drove him away. I don't know what's going on, but I wanted to call and ask where the girls are because you definitely don't want them to see this. I stood in the hallway, stunned, paralyzed, speechless. But there was no time for inaction. My mind flooded as I tried to make sense of what I needed to do next. I hung up, ran back in to grab my bag and laptop, and bolted to the car. How would I make sure the girls didn't see anything when they got off the school bus? Were the girls even coming home on the bus today? Or had John arranged a play date for them? Where should I go? A detective called to advise me to go to the police station. Should I do that? Or drive home and figure out what the hell was going on? A few hours later, after the police told me the search warrant was done, I went home. I spent hours frantically cleaning the living room and the girls' bedrooms so they wouldn't see our home completely destroyed. I didn't have time to clean the rest, but it would be late when they got home. So I was thankful I could put them right to bed. I researched bail conditions and tried to figure out how to do a wire transfer to pay a retainer for his attorney. I texted the masseuse to cancel John's anniversary massage in the morning. It was our 10-year anniversary the next morning. And I admonished myself that I'd never watched CSI or Law and Order. So I just felt completely out of my comfort zone trying to navigate the sudden legal mess I found myself in. I had no idea what was happening, other than the few words the detective told me when I asked if she could let me know what John had been arrested for. Sexual assault of a 15-year-old girl. That day, my life turned upside down. My husband was a full-time stay-at-home dad for our 2 young daughters. He did everything. He did all the grocery shopping, the cooking, the lawn mowing, the snow blowing, the cleaning. And all of a sudden, in one moment, I was in the middle of the biggest challenge I ever could have imagined. I had to figure out how to be a single parent, what to tell my daughters. They had never gone a day in their lives without their dad tucking them in, making them breakfast in the morning. I had to figure out how to navigate the legal system. I don't know if any of you ever watched Catch a Predator. It was a show that it was live, and it would set up sexual predators, and they would be videotaping and taking them away and arresting them. Watching that show, I never thought about the family. And all of a sudden, that was my reality. I had to figure out how to try to keep my business alive and not go bankrupt, how to file for a divorce, and how to not completely break down in the midst of this disaster. There were media trucks out in front of our house. My husband's mugshot was all over the news, the nightly news. And all of those hurdles that I shared at the beginning, all of a sudden, I was experiencing every single one of them. Sometimes many of them in a day. Overwhelmed? Check. Stuck? Check. Not handling myself the way I'd like? Check. Reacting poorly when blindsided? Yeah. But my Thoughtfully Fit model was finalized 5 days earlier. And so I became ground zero to test drive, to pilot it, and to engage my core. And there were many, many times where my core saved me. For instance, when another mom called and said, "Darcy, do you have anything to do with this?" Oh my gosh, I never for a moment thought anybody would think that I had something to do with that. And I was angry and hot. And in that moment, I had to pause to prevent myself from overreacting and throwing fuel on the fire. And I said, oh my gosh, no, I did not have anything to do with this. I was as blindsided as you were. And then you know what she said? Well, let me tell you, Darcy, if I find out that there are any pictures or video of my daughter, I'm sending the mafia to your house. And my husband has ties to the mafia. oh my God, this was my life. And in that moment, I had to take a breath to think, how do I want to respond right now? What's happening? This is my friend. What's going on with her? And asking myself these questions, I realized she was scared. Her daughter was at our house a lot under my husband's supervision. This wasn't personal. She wasn't attacking me. She was being a mama bear. And so in that moment, being able to pause and think, I was able to act calmly and say, oh, I can understand why you are scared. I am so sorry that you're also having to go through with this. And the reality is, when something happens, whether it's small or big, what you need to do is all 3 steps in order: wash, rinse, repeat. You don't just pause once a month any more than you could do 20 sit-ups once a month and feel like you have and create a strong physical core. You pause, think, and act multiple times throughout the day. I was on a podcast recently, and the podcast interviewer, he said, oh my gosh, Darcy, I realize I do it backwards. I act, and then I think, oh, why did I do that? And then I have to pause and try to figure out how to clean up the mess. So that's where I want to leave you with today, is your workout, your core challenge today. If you're sitting there thinking, where do I start? You start right where you are. And when you leave this masterclass and you get that email from somebody who is criticizing you, instead of reacting and hitting send, maybe that's your autopilot. Or maybe your autopilot is to silently stew and just hope it gets better. I want you to engage your core. I want you to pause and take a breath and think and ask yourself some questions. How do I want to show up right now? What would neutralize this situation? What information do I need? And then act. And maybe you instead of pounding out a reply, maybe you pick up the phone instead. And I encourage you to start small. So just like if you decided that you wanted to do your first 5K, you wouldn't wake up tomorrow and run 3.1 miles, at least not without getting sore, maybe even injured. You would start by buying a pair of tennis shoes and cute new running outfit. And then tomorrow morning you wake up, you would jog 4 blocks and walk home. And then the next day, you jog 6 blocks and walk home. And you keep doing that consistently until you could jog the whole 3.1 miles. It's the same way with your thoughtfully fit core. Start now to pause on the little things, to think and build up and strengthen that mental muscle, to try on new perspectives, to gain new awareness, and then to self-manage and choose how you're going to act thoughtfully. And when you do that consistently, you'll be able to handle the big challenges. Had I not been practicing and training for years to engage my thoughtfully fit core, I would not be at the place I am right now, where my business survived, where I got through that crisis. I guarantee it. And that's what you can do too. And that's my hope for you, that you can build your mental muscle to have the strength to handle yourself thoughtfully in every situation. And you can solve your people problems with confidence. And instead of reacting when that leadership team is like, why do we need this community engagement? How are we going to get customers from that? Instead of getting defensive, or instead of, getting critical or shutting down and silently stewing, you can pause in that moment and think, this is new. How can I educate them? What do I need to do right now? And then act thoughtfully. And as I close out this afternoon, I just want to share with you, oftentimes one of the first questions that I get after a presentation is, how are the girls? And my daughters are now 14 and 15. My 15-year-old will get her license in 2 years. And they are incredible. They are thriving. Now, don't get me wrong, they're sassy teenagers, but they have forgiven their dad. They regularly pause and think before acting. They've realized that this is their story. And instead of hiding from it or being embarrassed by it and trying to take a lot of energy to not talk about it, they're owning their story and writing their own ending. My youngest daughter, Jaden, she had to write a memoir last year in 7th grade. And I said, do you want help? No, I got it, Mom. I got it. And so she worked on it for weeks, and she came home from school the day, and she's like, Mom, I gave my presentation today, my memoir. And I'm like, really? Can I finally read it? And she's like, yes, of course. And so I'm reading her memoir, and it's about, her cat and the foster dogs and the challenges, and then, and how her dad got arrested and went to prison and how she would visit him. And I'm reading this going, and I asked her, I said, Jaden, did you give this presentation out loud? Yeah. How did it go, honey? Oh, it went great, Mom. Now, when her dad was arrested, she was in elementary school. In middle school, there was a lot more kids. And I said, how did they respond to you sharing about Daddy? Well, there were a couple of boys afterwards who said, wait, your dad is in prison? I said, yeah. Oh, that was it. They're owning their story. And I have worked really hard to own my story and to forgive my ex-husband and to be able to move through my days thoughtfully. Having said that, it's not easy. Being a single parent is hard. And there are days when I just can't access the pause and I react and I snap at them. But I'm better today than I was yesterday. And that's what I want to leave you with. My hope and my challenge for you is that you can practice engaging your core so that you can handle all of your challenges and people problems with confidence. And at this point, I'd love to open it up for questions, to invite Anne-Marie back and just hear from you what this has sparked for you. Thank you. And you can feel free, as Anne-Marie is coming back, to type your questions into the chat if you have any, or if there's a new awareness that you're having. I would love to hear it.
That was close, Darcy. I that was very scary. I was very nervous there because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get back on camera, but I'm here. And I just want to say, Darcy, first off, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and for being here today and being so open and you actually communicating with us. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you giving us that space to be there and to listen for you, and everyone else, like, please, like, let's give Darcy a round of applause right now in the chat for that. I'd love to see your favorite emojis drop, but my mind is racing a mile a minute right now with everything that you've said. I mean, the pause pinch is already a huge factor, and how you and your family are doing, and just how your effect of your own teachings and what you're doing in your framework, like applied to your girls. Oh, those sweet, sweet girls. Whew. I'm good. I promise I'm good. We're good here. I don't know if I should be a host anymore. Excuse me. But I'm going to move on to some Q&A, if that's all right with you, Darcy. Yes?
Absolutely.
Okay, we've got some good questions here. Okay, so the first one from Vinya: for neurodivergent individuals who struggle with ADHD, bipolar mood swings, and especially lethargy on the downswings, outside of therapy, which is obviously important, what kind of workflow structures do you find most helpful for keeping yourself going, but still being kind to yourself?
Wow. That's a big question. So Anne-Marie, I want to make sure that I'm completely mirror back. So for the neurodivergent, and really all of us are unique, how to handle yourself in addition and to have what structures to have to handle challenges besides therapy. And is that the essence of it?
Yep. What workflow structures do you find most helpful for keeping yourself going, but still being kind to yourself? Yep. Outside of therapy.
Yeah. Well, I'm a huge fan of therapy, first of all. So fabulous. And I think this is a place where having that self-awareness is key, so that where do you get stuck and what support do you need? So for instance, if you are really good at pausing and you don't overreact and you take time and you reflect, and maybe you're even good at thinking and you analyze and you try on all the different perspectives, but you know that you're not good at acting, it may be that what you want to create is some accountability. And you find, whether it is a colleague or a friend or a partner, to say, hey, I want to take time to think through this and to create a plan, but I need to actually pull the trigger and do whatever it is, right? Go have this hard conversation. Would you ask me about it by Friday so that I have some accountability? So for some people, if that's what your challenge is, figure out how you can get support and accountability. Now, for those of you who you have no problem acting, that's your strength. Maybe, again, your superpower, you overreact or you react too quickly. There might be a strategy for you that you put a big pause sign up, a big stop sign even. I had one client who told me, she said, Darcy, it just seems like every time when I come home, I am immediately so frustrated when I come through the door of what I'm seeing with my family, that I put a big stop sign on the door so that it just reminds me, take a breath, pause, and think, how do I want to show up when I walk through the door? And she said, I come through and now I smile and I say, hey, everybody, how was your day? Even as I'm tripping over the backpacks, and she said, and it works. So that may be a structure for some of you that find you are compulsive. You overreact. So bottom line is to think about, where do you get challenged? And then how can you build some support specifically to that challenge.
Great. Yeah, that's a lot to think about and stew on, but I love that. Let's see. Okay, the next question is from Alexandra. What is the best way to stay thoughtfully fit in the face of trauma and or trauma triggers?
Yeah. So trauma is hard. I didn't realize it as I was going through it. It's only through therapy that I realized that was a trauma that I went through and that my daughters went through. And there are now trauma triggers that I experience. So first of all, giving yourself, and even to the first question, what are some structures? Self-care and doing the work that you need to do to take care of yourself. So whether that means getting a therapist, whether that means taking time off, setting boundaries and saying no, so that you have time to journal, to reflect, to go to yoga, to meditate, to get a massage. What I found, and now 5 years later, I can talk about that trauma. And part of the reason I can talk about it is because of the work that I did to journal, to reflect, to cry and cry and cry and cry. And it's interesting because when I talk with people who have had some kind of a trauma, oftentimes the reaction is to shut down and go into self-protective mode. I had a lot of people say, Darcy, why didn't you move and get into another town so you don't have to deal with this? And, for me, thinking about shutting down and moving, now I have to hide from this. So there's no judgment for however you're dealing with your trauma and trauma triggers. I'm just providing some insights on what I found helped for me. And even working with the child psychologist, what helped for my daughters in this trauma is to figure out how you can get support to process it, to have some extreme self-care. And then when there is a trauma trigger, that's the moment right there to pause and to think, what do I need right now? How can I best support myself to deal with whatever this trigger is? Because a lot of times the other person has no idea that they're triggering you or that something's happening. And then with that new awareness, you can act. And it may be saying, hey, you know what? I'm just noticing that I'm feeling a little defensive or anxious. It's okay. I'm just going to go and get a cup of coffee and take a minute, or I'm going to go take a walk. Could we come back in an hour and reconvene? Or could we pause this meeting and have it tomorrow? And ask for what you need. And I realize that's like a short answer for what could be a really big problem or big area to explore. So if there's a follow-up, if I kind of miss the mark, feel free to either ask the follow-up or to shoot me an email afterwards. And we can explore some more strategies.
I love that. I kind of want to piggyback on that. And I don't know if this is even the right question, but it's kind of interesting for me and I would love to know. So here we go.
Yeah,
takeover for part 2. What is the first step, would you say, in like forming and setting a boundary? What is the first, does that make sense? Like, what would be the first step that I would take when I set a boundary, or even recognize that I need to set a boundary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, boundaries are key. And a couple of things I'll share with you about boundaries and some steps to keep in mind. One, a boundary is declaring what you will and won't do, what's okay, what's in and out of bounds for you. You can't set boundaries for other people. And that's really hard. So for instance, I'll share an example of a manager that I was working with, and she came into one of our coaching sessions and said, Darcy, I'm so frustrated because I told my team that our meetings start on time. I set a boundary. When we start at 9 o'clock, they need to be there at 9 o'clock. And people are coming late. And then they come in 10 minutes late. So now I need to catch them up. I need to repeat what was just said. I need to highlight. And it just drives me crazy because we don't get through our agenda. And so in the coaching, what we explored is the fact that her boundary she set was for other people. And you can't control what someone else says or does. You can only control yourself. And so what she did is shifted her boundary. And she said, my boundary is I start meetings on time. And I don't go back and repeat myself. And so at 9 o'clock, she starts her meeting. And when people come in late, they have to go find the information they missed from somewhere else. And over the course of the next several meetings, she kept her boundary firm. And she said it was hard because people would come in and I knew they missed something that they needed in order to have a valuable conversation, but I had to resist the urge because that was my boundary. And she said, you know what? People started showing up on time because they knew they were missing out. So that's one tip. And let me pause there and see if that's helpful. If there's a follow-up, I could go on and on and on. I love talking about boundaries.
No, that made a ton of sense. And I love that because I think Jessica said that here too. She said, so we can't create boundaries in relationships like with my partner or just creating boundaries for other people. Like that just doesn't work. The boundary you create needs to be focused on you and you dictate that. And then soon enough, others will understand that boundary. They'll recognize it and they'll follow. I never even thought about it that way.
Absolutely. And so yes, I'll give you another example, building off of that comment. Let's just say, I mean, this is another story from somebody who came in and said, Darcy, I'm just so frustrated. Every time I talk to my mom, she is criticizing me about my boyfriend. And it drives me crazy. And so I finally set a boundary and said, Mom, you cannot talk about him that way anymore. And guess what? It didn't work. Right? Because you can't set a boundary about someone else's behavior. And so what she realized is, oh, okay, she changed it. And she said, Mom, it really makes me feel bad when you talk about my boyfriend. I understand there's things you don't like and you need to go get therapy or deal with that or whatever it is. But I'm just telling you that that's not okay. And so if you complain about him, I'm gonna end the conversation because it doesn't feel good and I don't want any more. And so the next time her mom says, well, I just don't understand. He's lazy and da-da. Okay, Mom, I'll call you tomorrow. I love you. Bye. And she said, oh my gosh, I did that enough. And again, it's hard when you set a boundary to keep it firm. But over time, her mom realized if she wanted to stay in relationship and stay on the phone, that was off limits. And so it's just like if you think about going to any kind of a soccer game, you know what the boundaries are and you know what's in bounds and what's out of bounds. And that's part of what makes the game more fun. I mean, if you're playing in a field, we used to play when I was kids, and if you didn't have like the shoes creating the boundaries, the game was confusing and people get angry. That's out. Well, I know it's not out. We said the tree. No, it's not the tree. It's the road. So getting really clear on what your boundaries are and then communicating them and letting other people know this is what's out of bounds and here's what I'm going to do if you go out of bounds.
That is so, yeah, Jessica too. The game expectation reality really clicked because that's what we're taught when we're kids. However, out of bounds, something simple, just like with dodgeball. Like if you step out of line or you toe the line when you throw the ball over, you're done. The other team I don't really know the rules, and that's not the point here. The point here is that we're taught that from a young age, but transitioning that simple concept to boundaries as an adult, this is like, I cannot believe what's happening in my mind right now. Like,
and this is a lack of boundaries is one of the reasons people get overwhelmed. So that first hurdle we talked about, there's so much to do, I can't even think. That's the thoughtfully fit practice of stillness. In order to create stillness, you have to be able to set boundaries. You have to be able to say no. Or if it's too hard to say no, then be able to say, not yet, not me, or not this, right? So somebody asks you and says, hey, Anne-Marie, will you be the fundraising chair for this nonprofit? And you're like, I love this nonprofit. It's so great. Oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. But I don't want to say no because I don't want them to not like me, or I don't want them to think that I don't care about the mission. So you could say, not me, right? And that's some version of, oh my gosh, I'm honored that you're asking. I'm a single mom. My girls aren't driving yet. I'm overwhelmed. I can't. But you know what? I was just talking to my friend who said she wanted to do some more volunteer service and servant leadership. I'd love to make an introduction. Or maybe if it's not me, it's not this. Oh my gosh, thank you for asking me to chair it. I love the mission of this organization. I can't chair it, but I would love to write a check and be the first contribution. Or maybe it's not now. Oh my gosh, love that. And someday when my girls are both driving and I'm not playing, mom Uber, I would love to do that. But right now I can't take on that commitment. And if you can start to set boundaries and to say no, you can get more stillness in your life.
I mean, I think we're all just having like an epiphany of thoughts and things happening right now. Like, where have you been all of our life, Darcy? Like, what is this? Why are we now only connecting? I'm gonna get back to Q&A because I'm done taking over for myself, everyone. So let's see what other questions we have.
Love it.
But I think that was very eye-opening for all of us. Okay, so let's see. Oh, were those answered? Questions, sorry. Okay. So Taylor asks, curious how you might relate this to the boundary with community members when you're a community leader. If someone's out of the boundaries and you need to tell them that, how do you handle that with clarity and strength? That's a good one.
Oh, that's a really good one. Okay, so I'm going to just lock this one in. And this is the thoughtfully fit practice of balance. So, and balance is all about how do you balance what you want and need with what I want and need. And so if you're a community leader and somebody has crossed the boundary, depending where you are on that spectrum, for some of you, and this is what I find with the clients that I work with, it's hard to state what you want and need. Trying to find the win-win. So for some of you, you just think, oh, I'm not going to say anything. Maybe they'll stop doing it next week, or I'll just work a little harder. They cross that boundary, but I'll just deal with it. It's okay. And you don't say anything and you silently stew. And it's kind of like the buoy in the water that you push down. I won't say anything. It's okay. I'm not going to. And then all of a sudden, what happens? There's enough pressure. It explodes at a time and a severity that is not good. The other end of the spectrum is a person who is just like, I'm going to tell them that that's not okay. And they better know it. And so they're sort of like shutting down, right? I win, you lose. Over here, I lose, you win. And so what you're looking for when you want to create balanced relationships and figure out like, hey, you cross that boundary, is how do you state what you want and need? And how do you get curious to find out what they want and need so that you can try to find the win-win? And the strategy that we outline in the Thoughtfully Fit book is the 3 C's. So I'm just going to tell you, and this is a tip I use all the time, myself, with my clients, with my kids. Courage, compassion, curiosity. So you have to have the courage to be direct, to state what you want and need, to say, hey, you crossed a boundary. It's not okay. Compassion. You need to be able to share that courageous, direct message with compassion in a way that the other person can hear it, that you don't shut them down or make them defensive. And then curiosity is finding out, so what do you want and need? How is this landing with you? I know as the community leader, you want me to do X, and I just told you I can't do X. So what do you think we could do to get your needs met, given that I can't meet those needs? How are you feeling right now? How do we want to move forward? The curiosity. That's what helps you to be able to keep the balance in that relationship and honor your boundary. Is that helpful? Is that too much?
Helpful. It's just there's so much content there that I'm like trying to break it out. I'm like trying to and I'm like, yes, got it. All these little nuggets are just flying at us. Okay, we have 1 more minute left. Should we get through one more question?
Your call, completely.
Okay, we'll do one more. I want to do this last question by Taylor because this is really interesting too. Curious what practices you have leaned onto not carry the stress and other feelings of conflict into the rest of your day. How can you pause and say, now is not the time to be thinking about a solution for X, Y, Z. I need to be present in this moment. And then just a little note from Anne Marie, or going to bed and not thinking about X, Y, Z.
Yeah, instead of spiraling and letting it take over. And then all of a sudden, whatever is that's happening here, you take into the next meeting, and you're not really present, you're not effective, or you can't fall asleep. Yeah, first of all, I just want to name and say thank you for naming that, and say that these are challenges that come with being human. So if you have these hurdles, and if you're feeling the weight of, oh, this happened and how do I deal with it so I can move on, I just want to normalize. When you're thoughtfully fit, it's not about eliminating the hurdles. It's not about clearing the obstacles, because we don't control other people. We don't control pandemics. We don't control executives who don't buy into what you're doing. We don't control others. But we do control what we do next and how we respond. And how you respond determines whether you will falter or flourish. So that's another place in that moment to engage your core. You're feeling, and I can't remember the exact scenario, so correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but something happens and you're feeling frustrated, and you got to move on to get to the next event, the next meeting, the next, watching, cheering for the soccer game, whatever it might be. That's the time to pause and to take a breath and to think, how can I set this aside? How can I be present for whatever's next? What do I need to do to be able to let this go, to fall asleep, to be able to let this go, to be engaged in my next commitment? And the answers will be personal to you and your personality. So for some people, it might be like, I need to just take 5 minutes and journal and write this down so I can let it go. Or I need to call my best friend and say, hey, I got to vent for 2 minutes so I can just release this pressure. Someone else might say, I'm going to put on my Headspace app and just do a 10-minute meditation and just get calm and present. There's lots of different ways, but it's the think that allows you to ask those questions so that you have new awareness. So then you can act thoughtfully. You can do and choose to do whatever that is, because what you're ultimately trying to do is to put that thoughtful space between the stimulus and the response, right? So there's the stimulus, something happens. Instead of just having a reactive autopilot response, you take a moment to think, to create some new awareness, and then you choose your response. And that comes from Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. If you haven't read that book, it's phenomenal. And so I recognize that's a short answer, but I want it to be able to translate it to any situation, whether it's small, somebody cuts you off in traffic, or whether it's really big and frustrating and you're triggered. You can always go back to engaging your core.
Is a wonderful note to end on, Darcy. Thank you so much for spending a couple extra minutes here with us today. We are so grateful for you and the knowledge that you've just dropped all over us. We're going to be asking it for a while over here, if you know that. But yeah, I mean, this has been so eye-opening on so many different levels, so many layers here. So thank you. Really appreciate your time.
I'm so glad. Thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody, for hitting the pause button to be here today to give yourself the gift of time to think. And I challenge you now to go and act and, create the life that you love by being thoughtfully fit.
Definitely. Be right back. Gonna start now. Thank you, Darcy. Have a great rest of your afternoon. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We'll be back next month with another masterclass. So ta-ta for now.